Welcome back to another episode of Idiosyncratic Fables, a part of Wilderness Fire Productions, where we are cultivating the passion for books, audiobooks, and overall storytelling. Since time first began, we have been storytellers. Everybody has a story to tell, and I want to hear yours. I'm your host, James, also known as the Kilted Narrator, and today I am thrilled to welcome debut author Steve Harthun to the show. Steve is the mind behind the gritty LitRPG progression fantasy series Ashes of Vaeltharion. His debut novel, Burden of Fate, drops readers into a brutal world where magic has hard rules, monsters hunt the weak, and power always comes at a steep cost. We're talking about a washed-up Army Ranger from Kentucky who gets isekai'd the hard way. No chosen one glory, just withdrawal shakes, bad decisions, and a world that wants him dead. Steve writes flawed heroes who have to earn every level the painful way, blending dark fantasy, tactical combat, and real emotional weight. Steve is an IT manager by day, a father of 8, and somehow still found the time to craft one of the most promising new voices in the genre. We're going to talk about his journey from Royal Road to Amazon, how he builds ruthless progression systems, the heavy themes running through the series, and what's coming next in Ashes of Vaeltharion. Steve, welcome to the show, good sir. I am so glad that you're here with us today.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
So tell us a bit about yourself. You're an IT manager by day in Kentucky, a husband and father of 8. How did someone with that full plate decide to sit down and write a gritty LitRPG series?
Well, when you have nothing but time on your hands, obviously. Yeah, so I'm an IT manager. I've been in IT for about 30 years now. So from college, I pretty much got into IT, and I live in the south of Louisville, Kentucky area now. I grew up way out in the middle of nowhere, right on the Tennessee border. So matter of fact, if you knew where I came from, you'd be like, IT manager, really? Because they may not even have IT there yet. So just kidding. But yeah, so, I did IT. So I have 2 children, and my wife has 6 children. So we have a blended family. So together we have 8.
Fantastic.
We've been married about 16 years now. So, most of our kids are all adults now. Our youngest is actually 21. And the oldest is in the 30s. So it kind of gives you an idea. And there's a set of twins in there in the middle.
Cool.
Yeah, it kind of gives you an idea of the spacing of it. So, yeah, so my wife actually retired 2024, December 31st, 2024. So basically, beginning of 2025. And when she retired, I started talking to her about writing. I've always been, as my friends and family would tell you, I'm an avid storyteller, right? I've always got a story, and it's always embellished in some way.
Yeah.
So, I sat down with my wife, and I was like, you know what? I really want to write a series. I had logged about a little over 5,000 hours on Audible listening to different, LitRPG series.
Sure.
And I was like, this is something I'd really like to try. So I sat down with her and made a commitment that we would block out 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, roughly, that I would have time in order to, write and run and work on the business. And I think in the beginning, it was kind of like, yeah, this will be a hobby, and, he'll do something with it, and then that'll be it. Then my first book came out, and on Royal Road, I actually did pretty well. For my standards, I did well. I never hit Rising Star, but, I did pretty well on Royal Road. And then when I went over to Amazon and I launched my first novel, within less than 2 months, I had over 2 million page reads on Kindle Unlimited.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was blown away. Everybody told me that I would sell, 100, 150 books of my first book. And I was really honestly going into it with that. And I'm well over 7,000 now. And like I said, March 10th of this year was my debut novel. So it's actually done stellar to what I ever thought it would do.
That's
And
outstanding.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So that all worked out. Um, I think that my success has been, I wanted more realism, right? I wanted some tough topics and stuff you've already mentioned it. We'll kind of get to in here, but I wanted my characters to feel real, right? That was the main thing going into it, is I wanted the characters to feel real. I want them to have real problems, you know, and then figure out magical fantasy ways to solve those problems, right?
Right.
So, so that's just a little bit about me, and a little bit about how the series got started.
That's really cool. Now, your protagonist, Trace Viren, is a washed out Army Ranger from Kentucky dealing with guilt, alcohol, and trauma before being isekai'd. How much of your own background and experiences or observations went into creating him?
A lot. So, I've observed alcoholism in my life, throughout my life. I've seen what PTSD does to people, and I have a lot of friends that were in the military that suffered PTSD, from different things that went on, and so I've observed a lot of it. And you know, I wanted. So it started off. I wanted a character that, when he got isekai'd over, how would he deal with it, right? So I'll tell you how Trace Viren got built. Is, if I took a normal person, let's say an everyday person off the street, and send them into a fantasy world, what's their survival rate? Probably zero, right? I mean, they're probably dead the first day, within the first week,
Sure.
if not. So I wanted a character. So I needed to have a foundation of someone who could go into a brutal world, especially where there's going to be combat, that understood the weight of that and how to deal with it. Right. So that's where the basis of the Army Ranger, washed out side. So the washed out part gets more into plot, but his fundamental foundation was, he was a ex, veteran, that with combat, lots of combat experience and stuff, and he understood what it takes to take a life, what it's going to be like. So that was his foundation. From there, I wanted to make him very challenging. So I know a lot of veterans deal with PTSD. So, I wanted him to have those burdens. So in the backstory of Trace, essentially what happens is he's on a deployment and he's in a helicopter, and they get shot down, and his Ranger brothers all die, except for him, basically. And that's important for him also, because he was moved around to a lot of orphanages. He never really had a family growing up. And in doing so, that really brought out, his finally found his family, and then he loses them. So
Mm.
he ends up leaving the military and going back to Kentucky, where he's from, basically living in the stereotype Kentucky trailer park, doing construction work during the day. I almost made him a farmer, but I decided that maybe that one's been used. So I made him a construction guy. And then, so Kentucky, what's it known for? So it's known for its bourbon, right? So I took one of the biggest bourbon brands out there, Buffalo Trace, and that was basically,
Hey, okay.
yeah. So that's where that comes from. And then basically had him where he had nothing to live for. He basically gets up every day, does what he has to do work wise, and then drinks himself, pretty much unconscious at night. But the thing is about him is, he doesn't know how to die. He doesn't know how to give up. So, to him, one of his biggest flaws is that he just can't quit. Right. So he keeps living life, even though in his mind, with all the weight of it, he has nothing to live for.
So no Nicolas Cage moments from Chasing Arizona, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what lit RPG and progression fantasy authors or books inspired you the most? I know you've mentioned enjoying series like Dungeon Crawler Carl. What drew you to the genre?
So actually, I did a lot of, I, well, I'll skip ahead. Probably the series that inspired me to write was A Soldier's Life by Always Rolls a One. Love that
Yeah.
series. Actually, he was at LitRPG Con. Always Rolls a One was, and I didn't get the opportunity to actually talk to him. I seen him there, but I didn't get to talk to him. He was one of the people that I wanted to talk to. Actually, his series is what inspired me to actually write my series, because I really liked the military aspect of that series. Of course, in his series, they're actually like a Roman legion type military, but but I really like that. So, but I like Dungeon Crawler Carl. I like I like Primal Hunter, of course. He Who Fights with Monsters. Those are where I pretty much started. Was with Dungeon Crawler Carl, He Who Fights with Monsters, and Primal Hunter. Everybody knows the top big three, right? So that's
Right.
what kind of drawed me into it. But then once I got into it, so a long time ago, I used to play like EverQuest and World of Warcraft, and
Yeah. Okay.
I'm old school. Played those games. I remember, waiting in line outside GameStop at midnight to get the newest World of Warcraft expansion to run home and put in CDs after CDs for three. Which people today don't even realize we used to do. So I really like the video game aspect of it, right? And so when I found out about Dungeon Crawler Carl wasn't really lit RPG for me. It was more fantasy because there's not like hard stats and stuff in it as much. But then when I got into like Primal Hunter and He Who Fights Monsters, and then it started getting more crunchier and crunchier the further in I went, right? And from there, like I said, like over 5,000 hours of audiobooks.
That is fantastic. Um, Walk us through Burden of Fate and the Ashes of Vaeltharion series without major spoilers, of course. So, what is the core premise, tone, and what makes your take on lit RPG distinct?
Okay. Yeah. So Ashes is kind of what we've talked about. You basically have this veteran who has a lot of PTSD. He's got some addiction things going on with alcohol and stuff. And he goes to a bar one night and essentially he's in the bar and he gets in a bar fight and he gets kicked out of the bar and he goes outside and it's pouring the rain and he's kind of like, well, I can't get behind the wheel of a car. I'm not that drunk. So he goes into the alley and he actually lays down in the alley and passes out. Meanwhile, in this world called Vaeltharion, they have the Dominions pushing in, and the Dominion is basically we're coming in with the intent. They're the bad guys, right? They want to kill everybody. They want to burn everything. They want to destroy everything. Hence the Ashes of Eltharion series
Sure.
title comes from. And so the Dominion's pushing in. So the people of Eltharion, the king and his mage are like, we got to do something, right? We're losing. And the archmage talks the kingdom into using this old ritual, summoning to actually go and summon a champion. So their intent is they're going to summon this outworlder champion who's going to come in and they're going to be like the hero and they're going to save the day. Well, when they go to cast the spell, something goes wrong. And excuse me, and they're not for sure what's going on, but then all of a sudden they summon and this guy shows up naked in the throne room. He's got combat boots on, dog tags, and a bottle of bourbon in his hands and nothing else. And so they get the wrong guy, right? Well, when he shows up, he's level 1, he's intoxicated, and he's laying there on the floor covered in rain, and they're like, we made a mistake. Now here's the twist about it, is that when the system brings him over, it kind of analyzes him, and due to his alcohol content and stuff in his body, it makes him immune to all toxins and poisons. So you have immediate forced sobriety on the main character. So not only does he wake up in this world where he doesn't know where he is and they think he's going to be the champion, he can't drink or anything because as soon as he tries to drink, his system just denies the effects of it. Well, the kingdom's pretty much like, yeah, well, you're the wrong guy. So they don't care about him. So they basically throw him out in the street. And then from there, the story takes off to him trying to find a way to survive. He ends up finding this trainer named Braun, who's kind of an old ruthless military guy, from wars gone by. And he starts training Trace. And Trace really can't use a weapon. So one of the things I try to do in the story is if you got sent to a world tomorrow, you wouldn't know how to fight with a sword. Most people aren't going to know how to fight with a sword or a spear or anything. So Trace takes some beatings early on. When they figure out that in their mind he's useless, they send him into the city. That's where Braun picks him up. And Trace remembers using, like pugil sticks back in the military. So he has
Yeah.
some familiarity. So closest thing to that was a spear. So he ends up becoming a spear user. And then so the story takes off from there. And then eventually he builds a party and they do dungeons. They're doing different things to get levels. The way the system works is basically there's 30 levels that you can get. And then every 5 levels, is like a tier, if you will, and you get one ability and you get one spell slot per tier. Skills are just something the system will recognize if you become proficient enough, but there's no way to like instantly get skills.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's basically skills are off the table unless you're just like really good at something or just become really good at something. So you're going to get one ability slot. So there's no classes really. You can build anything you want in this world. So you have some people, all their abilities and and spells might be healing related, and therefore they're a healer, right? Trace obviously is a damage dealer, a spear user in the story. So really, it's about, without giving away any spoilers, it's about him dealing with his PTSD, his self-worth, and his addictions in this new fantasy world that's forcing him to survive. And also in that world, everything's earned, right? There's no, you don't go and get a skill scroll and use it, and now all of a sudden you're proficient with swords, right?
Right.
You got to put 20,000 hours in with a sword to be good with a sword.
Everybody's
So
got to start somewhere.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the overview of the beginning of the storyline to get you going. And so, without giving up any spoilers, the kingdom basically doesn't care about him. Matter of fact, they, are good if he's just dead.
Right.
So, and I can't tell you any more than that without giving away
No,
spoilers.
no, that's fair. Do you have any favorite tactical or earned the hard way moments?
Oh, every other page. Yeah, everything's hard, right? Everything's hard. Um, he's he's not overpowered by any means. He does get advantages that he can use, but there is no, he's not overpowered. He gets bones broken, he gets cut, he gets stabbed. There's a lot of situations where he's learning the rules of the world, right? And he suffers the backlash of it. There's many chapters. It's funny because there's a lot of chapters where he wakes up from like the day before and he's staring at the ceiling, recounting why he wished he was dead,
Yeah.
because of either the beating or the, whatever happened the day before. So everything's real tough for him. And it is for everybody, right? I mean, the whole world that they're living in is a not fair, dog eat dog world.
Now, book two, Burden of Mastery, sounds intense. The Dominion hunting him, loss of his team, a new teacher in the mountains. I mean, what can you share about where the series is headed and the themes you're exploring across all the books?
Okay, so I will tell you this: it's a 5 book series. It
Okay.
will be a 5 book series. As you mentioned, Burden of Fate is book one. Burden Mastery is book two. So as you can imagine, in book two, he's going to get his Yoda moment, right? He's going to finally find a
Yeah.
teacher that's going to really take him to the next level. That's got a lot to do with book two, and really learning what mastery is about. Book three is called Burden of Choice, and actually, it's actually at the editor now. So burden of choice has to do with a lot of the choices that he makes and who's he really making the choices for. So, and then book four is burden of power, and I can't tell you anything about it other than it's pretty. So actually, I'm writing book four right now. So
Nice.
I know what the outline of book four is, and I'm probably like 15 chapters into book four, but book four is called burden of power, and so it's the what's the cost of power, right? When you start to get to the higher levels and you're starting to get to where you really have abilities to can kill entire squads as opposed to killing an individual, what are the consequences and what is the cost of having power like that and using power like that, right? So that's book four. Book five is burden of war. So as you can imagine what book five is about. So that
I
kind of
was going
gives
to
you,
make, go ahead.
as I say, so it kind of gives you an idea across the 5 books of how it's going to progress.
I was going to make like a Rolling Stones joke there. Book five wouldn't be Beast of Burden, would it?
No, no, it's Burden of War. So it's
Gotcha.
funny, when I outlined the original series, it was 3 books. And then I wrote book one and was like, I can't make this work in 3 books. So I went to 4 books. And then actually when I finished book three, I was like, yeah, I can't make that work. It's 5 books. But now that I'm well into book four writing, I'll be done with the 5th book.
That's fantastic. And based on what I've read and just talked to from various people, be it in person, online, Reddit, wherever, people always love a completed series. And I find more often than not that people, yes, especially who love, LitRPG, if it gets to books, like 12, 13, 14, like, okay, just come on, end the series already. So I love that you have a beginning and an ending and a 5-book whole package. That's fantastic.
It is. So I will tell you something here. I haven't really spoke much outside of friends and family, but I will tell you. So when you read book one, chapter one ends with Trace passing out in the alley, right? And so then chapter two, he's in Vaeltharion. So I do have the outline for a 4-book series, and it's got the same chapter one of Ashes where Trace passes out in the alley, except for he wakes up in the alley in chapter two, and he's covered in blood, and the gentleman he got in the bar fight with had been killed, and he's arrested immediately, and it kicks off a 4-book, kind of more like Jack Reacher series. It's an alternate timeline, as if Trace had not went to Vaeltharion, what would have happened to him? Series.
Gotcha.
I do have that outlined. I probably will. I have another series I'm going to write before I go back and do that. But what it'll do is it'll give you an alternate timeline for Trace in the world today, and what would have happened if Trace didn't leave Earth and would have stayed here. What would have been his fate? So I think it'll be a really cool crossover to give you kind of like an idea of what Trace would have been like if he'd stayed here and what would happen to him.
Okay. As a debut author, what's been the hardest part for you of writing and releasing this series?
So the biggest thing in the beginning was just figuring out all the moving parts, right? I mean, going from, there's a lot of things I'm still correcting. So, so speaking of Ashes of Eltharion, so in September, book one will actually get I've reworked book one. So I wrote book one in a certain way, and I didn't know what I was doing, to be frankly honest, right? It's my first book I've ever written, and I made a lot of mistakes. I'll give you a couple simple examples. When I went to editing, 2 days before I published, I pulled 800 semicolons out of the book because I was told I shouldn't have semicolons, right? So that made
Weird.
a whole lot of well, I had a lot of semicolons.
Gotcha.
So I went in and made a lot of choppy sentences throughout the book. So there's stuff like that. Sometimes I thought I was Tolkien, and I, tried to write real flowery and use all this imagery, and then I've realized it really didn't work for the type of book I was writing. So I wrote book one in a certain way. Also, the biggest blunder I get is the Buffalo Trace bottle has a twist off in my book. It has a cork in real life. So I constantly get feedback about how it doesn't have a twist off, Steve. It has a cork. So I actually went back. I fixed everything in book one to the way I wanted it to be originally. And the way I did it is actually, I wasn't for sure. So I wrote book two. When I wrote book two, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a more clean, tight approach to things. I'm not going to be flowery. I'm going to be much more streamlined. And I did that. And the reviews of book two have been far better than book one. Don't get me wrong, book one did very well the way it is, but book two is a much better piece of writing, in my opinion.
Nice.
So I went back and redid book one. So it'll just get replaced in the the interior on for KDP and stuff. So I'm not going to do any big announcement when you order the new one, or if you update your e-reader, you'll just get the latest version of it. So that was one mistake I made. The second mistake I made, because I didn't know any better, talking about the journey, is I need a book cover. So I went out on Fiverr. I found some person on Fiverr and said, hey, I need a book cover. They said, okay, well, we'll take stock art and we'll do this, and we'll go in Photoshop and we'll make you a nice book cover. They gave them to me. I thought they were great. And then people started wearing me out that they're not illustrated, they're not drawn, they're not this, they're not that. I'm like, geez, I'm like, and somebody goes, oh, look, I can tell those covers are AI. And I'm like, no, I paid an artist. I even have the Photoshop file to prove that it wasn't. But, I get it now. I get the game. So I've actually commissioned an artist. They're working on book one right now. So I will have new covers. I didn't want them drastically different because, I didn't want to replace the covers with something totally different. So I'm keeping about 70% of the style and look of the cover, but they're hand drawn, illustrated, much finer detail in the background, stuff like that.
Nice.
So that's one thing, this is the rules of the game that people are following. What's what's big and popular, what is, what is all the big authors doing? I didn't know. So I just went into it blind and learned along the way. So, learning things like, what kind of covers to get, what your blurbs should look like, and then that all really leads into the marketing aspect, which is probably the biggest struggle of if you're an independent author out there. Writing wasn't that bad, right? I figured it out. Getting the book cover, once you understand what you're doing and the sizing and how things work, not so bad, right? Writing blurbs and all that, not so bad. But the marketing, whether you're advertising on Facebook or you're advertising on Amazon or I mean, that's a whole like world to go learn.
Sure.
And so, there's just a lot to it. And that's been it, like I said, I published my first book March 10th, and it's end of July. So that's my time of being live in the environment and having to learn all that as I went. And I'm sure that I have tons more to learn.
What would you say is the biggest surprise or most rewarding moment you've had so far?
At LitRPG Con, a author who I love their series came up to me, was holding my book, and asked me to sign it for them. I was floored.
Nice.
I'll be 100% honest. I didn't know who they were when they came up to me.
Sure.
And then I was signing it and asked them, the put their name in, who it was. And they told me their name, and I looked at them funny. I looked down at their badge, and I thought, really? So I played it cool, though. I played it cool, right? And I signed it and gave it to them and said, love your series and all that. That was really cool. The other one that was the funniest, most rewarding one. So we went to Denver for LitRPG Con, right? And we pull up, to the hotel, and we get out, and me and my wife are walking in. My wife, she's my biggest fan, but she doesn't know from the business side a lot of what's going on with it, right? She just kind of hears me talking about it, right? And so we walk into the lobby at LitRPG Con. There's hundreds of people in the lobby.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Hundreds of people. And we walk in, and I mean, literally, we walked through the door and had multiple people yell my name, right? Out. And my wife just turns and looks at me. She goes, this is real. And I said, well, yeah, kind of. We're getting there. So, but, those are two moments that I thought were just really cool, because I was like, wow, people actually read this,
That is really cool. I didn't have quite that experience when I went to LitRPG Con, though my wife and I had an absolute blast. But one thing I wanted to make sure of was how I dressed and how I presented myself. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was the only 6'4" bald guy with a beard wearing a kilt the entire weekend. I had my red kilt with me and my green kilt with me. And that worked as far as like I was a walking billboard. I mean, I had people come up to me like, hey, that's a nice kilt. Where'd you get that kilt? Hey, are you Scottish? Are you Irish? Like all manner of things.
Yeah.
And then it turned into that, was a lead-in question to, hey, by the way, are you on TikTok? After they read that I was a narrator on my badge. Like, yes, no, but the subtitles should have said, I'm old and I have no idea what I'm doing on TikTok. So I'm still trying to figure that out. And then fast forward, I went to a panel talking about posting into the void and book talk. And they said something along the lines of, what to do on TikTok, what not to do on TikTok. And they were all panelists of people who are very proficient on there. Ginger and the Foxes, a couple other guys that I don't remember their names. If you're listening, I'm sorry. I apologize. But I remember at the very end for Q&A, I stand up and I was like, hey, narrator James here, otherwise known as the Kilted Narrator. And I paused for like 2 seconds and I went, oh, maybe there's something there.
Yeah.
And then proceeded with my question, which was something along the lines of, what is the most effective way for narrators to post content, generate an audience, etc.? And they all got huge saucer eyes. They're like, oh my gosh, we love narrators on TikTok. I'm like, okay, great. And then we just swapped info and information and details, and it was good. So that I'm trying to put the Kilted Narrator into all things that I do to see what's going to come of that.
That's very cool. So before I even launched my first book, here's how I cheated. I was like, all right, I need a TikTok, I need a Facebook, I need an Instagram, etc. And I went and got my daughter and said, you're my social media manager. And she's like, okay. And I was like, I'll give you a commission off of every book I sell. so that it's you know, would motivate. And
Right.
I have a really large presence on TikTok. I have like 6,000 followers or something.
Nice.
And yeah, I built it up. Instagram's pretty close now. My Facebook's a little more smaller because on Facebook I do have a page for Ashes, but I have a author account too. But I don't accept pretty much everyone on it, so it's a little smaller. But yeah, so my daughter does it all for me. So find someone the right age, right generation, and turn them loose, and and pretty much sky's the limit for it. And she's done absolutely excellent with it. And I'll forget, I won't post something. I just did I gave away 5 signed copies of book 2. Every time I have a release of a book, I'll give away like 5 signed copies of it. All you have to do is go out and sign up for my newsletter, and you're automatically entered. And I'll pick 5 people. I'll give them a signed copy. Well, we had ran it, and it closed last Friday, and we went in, picked the names, and then the next day I'm open my social media, and there's a big thank you to the winners, and the 5 winners and all that. And my daughter had did it all, and I'd
Oh,
forgot
nice.
because I'd forgot completely about it, right? So if you wanted me to do it on social media, it'll probably be lucky if it gets up there or forgotten about. But she's really good at it, so I work a
Okay.
deal out with her, and that's what we do.
I'll have to track you down and see if I can find you and then give you a follow on TikTok, because
Yeah.
I am just now starting to figure out how this whole TikTok live thing works. And so I'm doing both that and Discord when I'm narrating live with author's permission, of course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah. TikTok, yes, Ash is a Vaeltharion on TikTok. So all my social media is basically my series name, which
Okay.
I have to think about later, because when I do new series, what am I going to do then? I guess,
Right.
but maybe I have to change it into like an author level account instead of just the series.
Sure. So it's safe to say you've got a lot going on. Like, how do you juggle writing with a demanding day job, big family? Do you have like a set routine that you follow?
Yeah, so yeah, pretty much. So during the week, usually in the evening, I spend a couple hours, and I'll do one or two things. I don't write every single day. A lot of people write every day. It's I kind of think through the story. I'm a plotter, first of all, so I'll write all my plot, and then what I'm going to be writing on. Then I'll kind of look over my notes and stuff, and then I'll think about it for a couple of days. And then when I'm ready, I'll sit down and I'll burn out, 10,000 words or whatever in a shot. But every day I set time aside to either do something with the business aspect of it, which is social media, or, work coordinating something with the, a formatter or editor or whatever the case might be. Or then I'll write. So, and basically I say, if you don't make it a priority, it's not going to happen. Right.
Sure.
So I had that agreement with my wife that, there's going to be a set amount of time that I'm going to spend on this. And, and she agrees with it. And so it becomes the priority. And then that's it. You just make it the priority.
That's outstanding. Now, your stories themselves, they focus on broken people finding their way forward. Are there bigger themes, such as redemption, trauma, resilience, fatherhood, or something else that you're weaving in?
They're always about redemption. I can't give it away, but yes. I mean, I think everybody fundamentally inside is a good person, or wants to be, right? And they want to achieve their goals and get somewhere in life. And what I like is to see the person who recognizes, wait a minute, this something's wrong here, or this is not right, or this is broken. And then, what do you do with that? It's funny, in book 2, there's a quote that I wrote in book 2. So there's a character named Pry. He's a young guy. He's like 15 years old, and Trace runs into him. Not to get deep into the story, but Trace takes him under his wing. And Pry has grown up in this world where killing and all these things are common every day, right? And he has no remorse about it or anything. And then he watches Trace fight, and Trace is basically ruthless. And you know when he fights the Dominion, for reasons of book 1 that he's pretty upset with the Dominion about, so he's pretty ruthless. But anyway, they're sitting at a campfire one night, and they're talking, and he asks Trace how he does it. And Trace goes, sometimes we're broken in ways that are useful. And when I wrote that
Mm.
line, it was like a great line because, it's the truth. Sometimes people are just broken in ways that are very useful for what they're trying to do. And that was the big thing that Trace figured out, is that he's broken in a way that lets him be the warrior that he is.
I love that. And yeah, everybody's deserving of redemption. I love that you're weaving that in.
Yeah.
What recommendations in the lit RPG world or dark fantasy books would you suggest to listeners who enjoy your style?
A Soldier's Life, I think, would definitely be. There's a series. Let's see, what was the other one that I finished before? Mage Tank. I liked it. I think it's, if you kind of like my stuff, you'll like it. I think you'll love A Soldier's Life if you like my stuff. But another one was Primal Hunter. Kind of has a feel to it. Where you, the only difference is the, like Primal Hunter and stuff. The characters are very overpowered, where my character isn't overpowered. And in A Soldier's Life, it's not that he's overpowered per se in the beginning. It's just that his mechanics, he uses mechanics of the system to be more powerful than he probably should be.
I gotcha.
But there's a couple that kind of fall in the same vein. Um, he Who Fights with Monsters, kind of, but now that it's so many books in, it's kind of taken on a different life now. So I think it'll be a little bit different, but you probably still enjoy it.
Yeah. And then finally, as we wrap up here, where can people find you and your work? Website, socials, etc.
Yeah, so pretty much Steve Harthun, search anything. So whether you're on Amazon, Google, whatever, you'll get me, or Ashes of Vaeltharion. Pretty much all of my stuff, all of my website's ashesofveltharion.com. If you go on TikTok, type in Ashes of Vaeltharion. I know Veltharion's hard to spell, and that was probably I probably didn't think that one through. But from Ashes of Vaeltharion, you can actually jump off of there to all my social media. From there. But my name on Amazon or the series, either one will get you straight to my stuff.
What I can say is while you were sharing your TikTok with me earlier, I went ahead and opened up TikTok on my phone and was kind of sneaky about it and typing it in. So, listener, if you're listening, I got you covered. All you got to do is type in Ashes of VA and it fills in the rest for you. I promise it's going to be pretty easy.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah,
You're
because
very welcome.
most people, the two things that I usually see wrong that you got absolutely correct was my last name of Harthun and Vaeltharion. You got both of those correct.
I've got a gift for pronunciation. What can
There
I
you
say?
go.
Steve, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and agreeing to be a part of the show. I truly appreciate you.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity.
It's been wonderful. And thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you please rate, review it, and subscribe to it wherever you get your podcasts, because it helps us to reach more storytellers just like you. You can also drop me a line on social media or email me about who you'd love to hear next. Or even better, if you would like to be a guest on the show. I promise it's not that hard. It's pretty easy and I make it pretty streamlined, so no worries there. Also, I host a Discord server where I showcase my behind-the-scenes work of audiobook narration. I invite you to click the link in the show notes below, because I would love to have you as a part of that community. And as always, everybody is worthy to be loved. Everybody is worthy to be heard. Everybody has a story to tell, and I want to hear yours. So until I talk to you next time, dear listener, peace be with you.